Hey guys, welcome to FunNGun. Figured now that I finally got my Lakeside machine LM7 belt fed 22 set up the way I wanted it, I'd go ahead and make a video going over some of the parts that I use in this particular setup and a few things that I've tried with this particular setup since I made the original video going over how the action itself worked. And I have to say, if you have seen my top 5 22s that 22 Pointer himself doesn't have, you've probably seen a quick peek of how this gun is currently set up, but in this one we're going to go over the parts. Just a little bit more in-depth look at it than that little clip that I had in that video. So we're going to go ahead and start off here by showing you that this particular gun is unloaded. And we're going to start off with the first thing we've done here is it does say belt me right here on the inside of the feed tray now. Figured that was just a funny little Easter egg to go ahead and add there while we were doing the work to it. And that's actually where we got the idea for the video, or the short, called When My Belt Fed 22 Talks to Me Dirty. And like I said, that's exactly where that idea came from. So if you hadn't seen that short yet, go check it out. It is a pretty funny one in my opinion. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the parts we use here. We're going to go ahead and start at the back of the gun here. Excuse me. And the stock here we have is a CMMG rip stock. And the rip stock is meant to be pulled, and it'll pull all the way out and deploy to where you want it at. But that is in conjunction with their buffer tube, and I did not actually use that buffer tube. I actually chose to go another route here, and we actually have a PWS enhanced buffer tube. And the reason for that is I didn't really think that was a feature that I needed, and it was quite a bit heavier than this particular buffer tube. This buffer tube is one of the lightest buffer tubes on the market. As you can see here, it has a lot of weight milled out of it. And the whole idea behind this particular lower setup was to lighten it up, because the belt fed 22 upper itself is pretty heavy to start with, and the way I had it set up before, the overall gun was quite heavy. I believe the upper itself weighs around 5 pounds, if not a little bit more by itself. So I figured as much weight as I could shave out of this setup, the better, because I like shooting it offhand more than I like shooting it off a bench. Excuse me. So that is the reason that I decided to go with this buffer tube over the actual rip buffer tube, or rip style buffer tube itself. And this one actually comes with the ratcheting castle nut, which is also pretty cool. You could actually buy this and put it on any buffer tube, but the fact that it comes with this one's pretty cool. And a little bit more about the stock. The reason I went with this stock is because it is considered a lightweight stock, and I like the fact that it was metal and it could be Cerakoted to match the rest of the gun itself. Let's be honest, I essentially picked out the stock because it looked cool, and in my opinion it definitely looks cool. So that is the reason for that, is to lighten it up. And we went ahead and went with a Fostech magnesium lower, continuing with the light to lighten it up here. And this lower is a third of the weight of a regular AR lower, and when this was stripped, you could hold it in a regular stripped lower and you could definitely tell the difference. And the way this is set up now versus a regular AR lower, which is like a regular stock and a regular style mil spec lower, you can physically feel the difference in the two side by side. So I thought that was pretty nice as well. Pretty cool, I guess. This looks pretty well like a mil spec lower. You do have a little bit more of a ledge right here on the buffer tube, or where you can thread the buffer tube in, is a little bit thicker right here. You do have an integrated a trigger guard that has been milled out to lighten it up. So that looks pretty neat, just kind of gives it a cool look. Excuse me. Let's see here. What else do we got here? We got let's see, this is a Arma spec 45 degree safety. I do prefer the 45 degree safety. Just makes it easier to get it flipped off when you have a shorter thumb. So that is nice to have. It's actually ambidextrous, and you can actually swap the sides here. You can put the short one on this side and the long one on that side if you're left-handed. So that's a nice feature as well. So that is the safety. It has a Phase 5 bad lever style bolt release in it, which you wouldn't think you would need that with this 22, but it also allows you to be able to pull it back and lock it open with one hand. So that's a pretty nice feature with it being in this configuration. But I figured if I ever wanted to shoot this particular lower with a different upper, it'd be nice to already have that on it. So that's one of the reasons I went with that. And also we have a Hyperfire Eclipse trigger in this. This is their top of the line trigger, and it is essentially the same thing as their competition trigger, but the Eclipse version here has a nickel boron coating on it. Goes ahead and slickens it up, and this is a very nice trigger. I'll probably do a full video on this trigger. I'm quite happy with the way this trigger turned out, or the way it feels, that is. It has the adjustable little shoe right here. You can kind of move it up and down and change the leverage point to kind of give you a different feel of how the trigger pulls. And you can actually get these in quite a few different colors. And I do plan on picking up some different colors. We'll get into a little bit more of that in a second here. We'll get farther down here and talking about some other stuff. But it has a really nice trigger in it. I went ahead and put a set of Wilson Combat anti-walk pins in it just because they were cheap, and just go ahead and kind of just make sure the pins ain't going anywhere. It's not something you have to have. Just figured since it was cheap, I'd go ahead and do it. And it has a Odin Works extended magazine release on it. Kind of the same reasoning as the bad lever here. I figured might as well go ahead and have the extended release on it if I want to shoot this lower with a different upper. And it also does make it easier to pull the belt box down to go ahead and change your box on the belt box and click it back in. So nice thing to have. While we're talking about there's some different things here, I'd mentioned that we did Cerakote this. The lower here came in this tungsten color from the factory, and we just went ahead and matched the upper to it because I did like the color that was already. So this is considered a tungsten Cerakote coloring. And as you can see, like I said a minute ago, we went ahead and matched the stock to it because that was the idea when I got this stock, was it would make a nice clean look by Cerakoting everything to match. At the same time, we went ahead and made the bolt release, the barrel release button and the top cover opening lever black to kind of tie in with the theme that everything else, like control-wise, is black. So that is why we did that. It just kind of gives a little bit of contrast. Let's see here. Now for my favorite part really of this setup is this is a handguard that I've wanted a reason to have one for quite a while and just couldn't ever find one until I picked this up and decided I want to start dropping some weight off of it. That is a Bradden Arms blade handguard, the blade being the version with a slope cut front on it. They make this with a round cut, and a round cut that has a few pick rails on it to go ahead and mount some stuff to it. But this is I believe it was around 11.5-inch handguard, and it come in at 4.7 pounds. It is the lightest handguard that I could find in this length. Now, I will say that Fostech does make some magnesium handguards that come pretty close to it. I think they were still a little bit heavier, but either way, I've always wanted one of these handguards just because I think it's cool how this is a carbon fiber rod woven together and then epoxied to stay into that configuration. It's a very rigid handguard. It's not going anywhere, and in my opinion, it just looks really cool. So that was the reason with the handguard. Just go ahead and drop the weight off. So as you can see here, there's a theme to drop as much weight off this as possible, and that's exactly what we've done here. This gun is significantly lighter than it was when I started off with it. And let's see, one more thing. We got a Hogue modular grip here, and if this is something you're interested in, I do have a full video on this particular grip on my YouTube channel here. This is one of my favorite AR grips because the fact you can pop this back off, put a beaver tail one on there, you can pop the front off, take the finger grooves off. So like in the name, it is modular. You can change it up, so that is a pretty cool grip. Now let's get into a few more things here. We have the belt box adapter here, and if you've seen my previous video where I was talking about the action, you've seen that this box was pretty beat up looking, had some surface rust on it that would not clean off. So we went ahead and Cerakoted this the same black as the lever and the button on the other side, just to kind of go ahead and freshen it up a little bit. And what I've done here is I went ahead and used one of these laserable or laser friendly business cards that you can use to go ahead and laser your work information onto. Got these from my buddy Spencer over at Beaverdale Pond. He does have a laser, and he's the one that put the belt me on the feed tray there. Thank you for that, Spencer. That's pretty funny, I'm not gonna lie. And that is what is in behind this. I actually just took one, cut it in half, and went ahead and did the redneck thing and duct taped it in there. And not only does it look cool, it is actually functional at that, because by putting this in there, it covers up the letters here that when you would shoot quite a few rounds, the cases would get hung up there. When you pop the cover off, the bottom rounds would fall out of the tray, and you'd have to shake the gun around quite a bit to get the top ones to fall out because they were hung into this lettering, so that does help with that. So not only does it look good, it is functional as well, and that's also why I was talking about the fact that you can get different color little trigger shoes here. I do plan on picking up a red one to match this, and they make a purple one and a blue one as well, and kind of really considering putting the purple into this, putting the purple shoe on it for a little while, and then I could change it up over time. Just figured it'd be kind of cool, and that was a cheap modification that would end up being functional. And I guess something I was pretty proud of is, if you have watched my 22 Plinkster video, you've seen my miniature belt box here, and this is something I made from scratch using a piece of sheet metal and some plastic I had laying around that I heated up and molded to where it would fit up against the bottom of the feed tray there. And it actually goes ahead and locks onto the belt box as well. And what I use to wrap this is made by a company called Holstersmith. They call it Holstersmith EDC wrap or Cobra fabric wrap. And this is actually made to wrap a Kydex holster to kind of just give it a cool fabricy look and kind of soften up the Kydex feel up against you a little bit. They also make, I've seen a few companies offer this for red dots that you put on your pistols as a protective wrap as well. But I figured I had to go ahead and put it on this just to go ahead and make it, because my paint job didn't turn out the best, and this definitely, in my opinion, made it look way better. And the reason for this box, and the reason I call it my miniature box or my mini box here, is this is the full-size box that comes with this particular setup, and as you can see how large that is versus mine. Mine is significantly smaller, and it's actually, like I said, it's made out of metal. And the reason behind this particular box was mainly so I could shoot this offhand a lot easier. Those boxes, the factory box there that come with this particular setup will hold 200 rounds. These will hold around 100. I don't have a 150 round belt, but I feel like you could get a little over 100 rounds into this box. It does fit 100 rounds just fine. You got a little bit of space left in the top of it. That was the idea when I made it. But like I said, really happy with the way that come out. Has functioned flawlessly for me. Something else I've done to this since that original video is I put these pieces of Velcro on every one of the boxes. And if you have one of these particular setups, this is something I do recommend doing. I know there ain't a lot of people out there that have these belt fed uppers, but on all of my belts themselves, on the pull-through tab, now it does prevent you from pushing the tab through and being able to pop it through and lock it and do all that. That's not how I load it. I open the door, put the round in, and then close it and rack it once. But this allows you to Velcro the tip of the belt to it, so when you're clicking it into the belt box and everything into the lower, you don't have to worry about the belt falling back down in there, and when you get done, you can just click it off and go ahead and load it. Definitely a cheap and worthy modification that came out quite well. I was pretty happy with the way that worked. That's the Velcro that just kind of clicks into itself, that is. And something else I've got to try since I picked this up is, I mentioned these in my original video, but I hadn't had a chance to try them yet. This is the disintegrating links. And these actually work surprisingly well. If you've watched my video, the one where we're torture testing a 22 suppressor, these are the links we were using in that to do a 200 round dump at the beginning. Now, you'll see the gun jam a few times. That is not the link's fault. That is the fact that we never have got around to tuning the sear drop to that particular lower, so it doesn't have hammer follow, so you do get a little bit of hammer follow every now and then shooting full auto. But these little things actually work quite well. They're pretty easy to load. It's a little time consuming because there's so many of them. You can get such a large belt. But I had to say these are probably easier to load than the cloth belts themselves, just because of how easy they slip together. And they did run quite well. You just got to be a little bit more careful with them to make sure that your rounds stay seated in them properly, because these are the original style, so they're fixed. They're made where they'll work with 22 Magnum as well, and not only just 22. So that makes them a little bit loose on the 22 cases. Excuse me. And the only disadvantage I really see to these is they're made to be shot and dumped into one of these belt boxes, as you've seen there in that video. If you've watched it, you'll see them going into it, and you'll see some of them flying over the top of it. So we had to track those down in the room that we were shooting in, which was kind of annoying. So when I go to mess with these again, I'm probably just going to buy a brass catch to go ahead and throw these into, so I don't have to worry about them flying over the top of my side box on the other side. And like I said, these are made where they'll work with 22 Magnum. He actually did have a second version of these. I'm going to try to track down some at some point. He may still have some. If he does, I'm going to try to get some of them that were infused with metal, so they're magnetic, number one. Number two, they are sized properly for 22, so they feel a little bit better, so they should be a little easier to go ahead and keep the rounds from sliding back and forth, so you don't have to keep it in a box the whole time you have them, so you'll be able to treat it like a regular belt. But these are actually pretty cool. I'm glad I got quite a few of them to mess with. Looking forward to playing with them quite a bit more, but I will say, I do have quite a few things in the works for this particular setup still. The number one thing being, I'm going to try and work on getting a 1022, what's that barrel brand? It's a Tactical Solutions lightweight barrel milled to fit into this, because this does have, if I can get it to come out here, a quick detached barrel. And we're looking into being able to mill other barrels to click into this. And I have been talking to someone that knows he can do it. So it's not if we can do it, it's just when we get around to doing it. He's got a new mill coming in. It's going to make it a lot easier so we can mess with that. So that is something we're looking at doing. And we're also going to possibly mess with the idea of making an integral suppressed barrel setup for this, because the fact that you can just click the barrels in and out of it is pretty cool. So the idea of being able to just change the barrels to whatever you want to shoot that day, different wise, that would be pretty cool. And I guess technically, since these were made where you could shoot 17 Mach 2 in them, I could pick up a 17 Mach 2 1022 barrel and have it cut to work in this as well if I wanted to mess with that a little bit. So that is stuff that I do plan on messing with over time. So this is not technically the final setup of this, but it is going to be the current setup in it for quite a while. So figured I'd go ahead and show you a few things about this. Definitely, I had to say, the coolest 22 rifle that I've ever messed with, and probably one of the coolest ones around. So that's all I had for you today.
Okay, if you made it this far, I just want to say thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. If you're looking for more FunNGun right now, you can click one of the 2 recommended videos there. If you're looking for more FunNGun later, you can go ahead and click that there subscribe button. I sure would appreciate it. And if you're finding me from Facebook, go ahead and click that open app button at the top to make all that a lot easier, and I'll see you next time.